Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 598. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. SPaMCAST 598 features our essay titled Recognizing a Toxic Meeting Culture. Just because you are meeting remotely doesn't mean meeting culture has been reset. Now, even more than when we're all together, getting meeting culture right is critical to maximize communication. In Reread Saturday News, we tackle Chapter 10 of Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. The subtitle for this chapter is Advice for Tough Cases. In my considered opinion, nothing goes perfectly to plan. All conversations are a mixture of things that you've run through your head to prepare and parts that are off script. Having a wide range of additional tactics for hard issues makes it easier to approach crucial conversations with confidence. We also return to the QA Corner with Jeremy Berriault. Jeremy and I talked about continuous learning. Our discussion was taped earlier this year. It was a different time. I left the references to the excitement about the new year in the comments to show how fast the world can change, and it can change again. We have a few days left before the poll to pick the next book in the Reread series closes. I would like to hear from you. Click the link in the show notes. Take the poll. If you do not have a copy of Crucial Conversations or have tossed it at somebody during a crucial conversation, it's time to buy a new copy. Please use the link in the show notes. Supports the podcast and obviously supports the authors. Recognizing a Toxic Meeting Culture by Thomas M. Cagley Jr., Megan E. Cagley. In some organizations, meeting culture is out of control, or worse yet, toxic. In order to see how bad the situation is, measure the problem. One simple measure to understand how much of the workday is consumed by meetings is to calculate a burden rate. A burden rate generally is the amount of non-engineering time divided by the total time expended on a project or a sprint. In this case, we are focused on meetings rather than all of the non-engineering activities. For software or hardware teams, I would not count specific working sessions such as pair or mock programming meetings. These are engineering activities that are specifically designed to develop functionality. I would, however, count all of the classic Scrum ceremonies. To get a sense of the range of possible levels of meeting burdens teams have to live with, I asked 5 friends, a combination of project managers or Scrum masters, to estimate the burden rate for their entire team. I asked them to estimate the meeting time for the last sprint, or 2 weeks for the non-agile project. The responses ranged from 25% to 60% of the team's total work time were taken up by meetings. Anthony Mercino calculated a worst-case meeting load inherent in Scrum at 16 hours, 20% of a 2-week sprint. Many teams need far less. I have observed a few high-functioning teams that spend only 8% of their time in sprint meetings. High meeting burden rates translate into less functionality delivered, high levels of overtime, or high levels of technical debt. None of these outcomes are good. Several problems drive problems in meeting culture. A few of the most problematic issues are: 1, lack of preparation. Most meetings require some form of preparation to enable useful participation. Participation can include preparing your ideas, collecting thoughts, introspection, and even pre-reading material. Far too many meetings start with bringing people up to speed or in a discussion of topics that have already been addressed, which are clear from the required pre-work. If you do not feel you need to do the required pre-work, you should not accept the meeting. This can also be a reflection of uncontrolled work in progress. 2, lack of attention. Put the phones, laptops, Apple Watches away before the meeting starts. Next time you're observing a meeting or getting ready to zone out in a boring part, count the number of people in the room doing something else, including yourself. If the count yields a non-trivial answer, use a retrospective to identify how meetings of that type can be made more engaging or avoided. Note, I use the term non-trivial purposely, rather than a percentage. For example, if the chair of the meeting or the key figure has checked out and is multitasking, even 1 is non-trivial. 3. Avoiding conversations through data dump meetings. While meetings to personally convey complex or emotional packed news can be important, using these platforms to avoid having a dialogue, defined as a free flow of meaning between 2 or more people, Crucial Conversations Reread, look that one up, is a problem. If you are not inviting the free flow of information, consider recording your message on a video. 4. Interruption of flow. In most corporate environments, your calendar is owned by everyone. If they see an unbooked time, it's fair game to book a meeting, even if you're working on the next new big idea or concentrating on complicated business problems. According to a UC Irving study, it takes 24 minutes to recover from an interruption. Meetings are interruptions, even if they're great meetings. Techniques I've used include blocking chunks of my calendar to meetings so that they can't be booked, and leaving time open that is less conducive to focus so that flow state tasks won't be interrupted. 5. Failure to elicit action. Most meetings are held to elicit an action. The virtual coffee and big corporate announcement accepted. Failure to facilitate the meeting to generate a decision, create an output, or agree on a plan wasted everybody's time. Meetings require facilitation. If you need help guiding a meeting to a conclusion, get help. That's what coaches are for. Last year, I sat in a stand-up meeting, sensing a problem here, with 40 people for a whole hour. The meeting used 40 hours that firm can never get back to share status and for a high percentage of the people in the meeting to do their emails. In conversations afterwards, no one was happy, but no one wanted to address the issue. It was the culture of the organization. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to drop us an email at spamcastinfo@gmail.com or call me and let's have this kind of a discussion, this crucial discussion about meetings at 01-440-668-5717. We look forward to the conversation. Jeremy Berriault, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Jeremy. And, it's 2020.
Yeah, I know. Scary. I saw there are news reports going on now talking about Y2K, and I just kept shuddering about me spending an entire night in an office just watching a clock.
Yeah, well, I wasn't on the critical path by then. Therefore, I went out and, I partied like it was 1999.
1999.
So to speak. Now, I can't wait. So my favorite day in this year is going to be 10/10/2020.
Oh, jeez. That's right.
Yeah, I was doing my 5 miles this morning in the snow. I was thinking about that, and it's going, that'll be a cool day, and has some degree of symmetry to it.
Yes.
Jeremy, today, before we go too far down the path of luxuriating in the beginning of a year, let's talk about continuous learning and why that's important.
Yeah, I think no matter what role you have, but especially in QA, you have to, you can't stand still within one way of doing things. You have to know what's coming down the pipe for the changes that are going to be coming in. It was interesting. I saw an article a little while ago saying, like in 2010, the top 10 big things and trends that are going to happen. And then it compared it to the list on 2020, and there was only 5 things from 2010 that are still on the list. And like there's AI, there's Internet of Things, there's a few other continuous delivery. And if a QA analyst from like 20 years ago, such as myself, didn't do any continuous learning to see what was coming on, I would be dead in the water in trying to get things done.
So as a leader and as a manager, have you seen people that stop learning, and what's a sort of a general way of seeing whether or not they do stop learning?
For me, it was always during our one-on-ones. And in those discussions with those individuals, it was mostly, for me, based on experience, would be the ones that are like, they're close to retirement. Like they're about 5-6 years away from retirement. Usually they are just interested in just coming in, getting the job done, and getting out the door, putting in their 8 hours and going home. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like to me, it makes sense, because for them to potentially try to relearn something new would take them a few years. They would probably get a year or so of experience out of it, and then they would retire. Now, there are some individuals I know of that were close to retirement that they were gung-ho. They want to learn as much new stuff as they can. But it's just, I've never seen anyone like within the millennials or the Gen Ys or whatever they want to call it, whatever we're calling them now, the younger generations, like they always want to learn. I've never seen one that just wanted to laze around and do nothing.
Hopefully you will never see that happen. You know, the whole idea of continuous learning, I think, is obviously important. We could scan around our offices or respective offices and, you know, measure the weight of information in them. But when you're first meeting someone, when you're doing a job interview, what are the kinds of things that you're talking about with them to get a sense of? Because if you ask them, hey, you know, are you into continuous learning? I know what the answer is, but how would you know, how would you get a real sense of that as a person who hires people?
For me, it's more asking the questions that are a little bit outside what when you've reviewed their resume and reviewed their skill set. Normally you do the initial phone interview just to see if they're capable of coming in and working. When you're doing that face-to-face, that's usually where I find out how they deal with new things and how they approach things and what their kind of soft skills and skill set to get around it. And normally I would just ask stuff that's a little bit outside of their skill sets and what they have. 9 times out of 10, actually I think probably 99% of the time, you'll rarely find that one resume that hits each and every point you want in that job, in your job description. And when you have that initial talk with them, you're rarely going to find the person that's going to be able to just rhyme off everything as if they read your strategy before they even came into your office. So it's asking those questions that are outside their skill sets and see how they react to it. And normally, if they kind of come, it's like, well, I'll work with the team. Like you can see if they're from a teamwork perspective. Like I'll work with the team, I'll work with the lead to understand and go through. Or like I've had one where they've asked, like, do you have a learning program? Do you have an actual education program for those type of scenarios? So it's those type of answers that will show that that individual is into continuous learning without directly asking them. So you're sort of just you're prodding them a little bit to go in the direction you want them to go in. And if they give the answer you want, then you know that they're the ones you want to get in front of you.
Have you ever gone down the path of asking them what was the last or the most current thing that you picked up? What is the new technique that you've picked up? And then ask them how they got to there. What is it that got them to be proficient at it?
See, that's interesting. I've never thought about asking that question. That is a good question. I now that I know that, I think I'll use it, because it does make sense to see what they've picked up. Normally, when I go through the interviews, the general question is, okay, for the next couple of minutes, tell me what you have done in the past 2-3 years. Give me an understanding as how their career progression has happened wherever they worked. And the ones I like are the ones that will not go into a lot of detail, but they have said they've done a lot of stuff going through. And then I pick up on certain things. And then during the interview, I fly back to them to either try to catch them, just in case they're trying to blow smoke, or if they do have that understanding, they do have that learning.
Who's responsible for continuous learning? The
Management?
company or the management or the person themselves?
Overall, I think it's the management that has to provide it and has to be able to have their plan to go through to get their employees to continuously learn. Now, with that, the employees, they are responsible as well. Now, it's not to say that they should go off on their own and do stuff outside of work time or anything like that. Now, that's great if they do. But management, from an accountability perspective, I'm not going to say responsible. I think from an accountability perspective, the management should be accountable to make sure that their teams have the right structure and needs to be met with giving them a proper program to continuously learn. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to send them off on courses every few months or have them away for a few days. You can have internal courses. You can have an internal program. You can have mentors that, from a cost perspective, is relatively small. So it's the way, from an accountability perspective, management, responsibility, management, and employee.
It's interesting. Maybe we come from slightly different cultures. While I have been in organizations that support and have continuous learning programs, I am of the opinion that the drive and the impetus and the focus really has to come from the individual rather than, management might create the environment, and I can go back to my Deming on that one. But if people don't have the drive, don't have the willingness to actually put in the hours, and sometimes they have to put them in somewhere else other than within work time, it becomes less of an important part of who they are and what they are versus, I just got to do this to check the box sometimes.
Agreed. But from a management perspective, they are accountable, because if they want their organization to continuously grow, they have to be able to put that out there. Now, to actually take the courses, this is where I agree with you, to take the courses and get through it and learn, it is up to the individual to be accountable for it. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a I know I'm kind of flip-flopping, wish-washy type stuff. I guess I could be a politician later on in life, but it's kind of like a fine line. But I think overall accountability is to make sure that it's there. The management has to do it. Like if they don't, then the organization is going to get stale. If you look at agile organizations, if they don't provide that type of continuous learning or training models or structures and any of the such, then it's great. Okay, you can do your 2-week sprints, you can do your regular releases, but from a technology or innovative point of view or anything like that, it's going to be slow, because you're not giving your team the needs, the structure to improve and innovate from there.
I think we're probably closer to the same page than I think we appear. But I would suggest that it is the organization who must create the expectation, perhaps some structure. But if they tell people everything they need to go, then there will be no innovation. It will be, you will in essence stay within a boundary. It's sort of like the argument over certifications. If we just create a hard boundary around what we want people to know and where we want them to go, then we will continue to get the same stuff over and over and over again. And the structure will punish anyone who wants to innovate and move beyond that.
True. Yeah, I think we can keep talking about this forever, I think. To me, it's just a kind of like a blurred line as to where it should be. Because if you look, like for me, over the past 20 years, 25 years, I saw the pendulum switch flip like to all the way to the management side's accountable to, nope, now it's the employee and back. It doesn't seem that there's any sort of happy medium. I think it's all just reactionary. It's like, oh my God, we got to do something. I think nowadays, as teams are moving, as organizations are moving towards agile development, and you have your true self-managed teams, then that's where you have your management providing that structure, and then it's up to the self-managed team to take that structure and continue and learn and become better and prove that they are becoming better and going forward.
Jeremy, continuous learning important or not?
Definitely important.
Jeremy Berriault, how would people continue the conversation? As you say, we could go on forever, but I think people would start to tune out. Let's get the listeners to weigh in and become part of the conversation. So how would they go about finding Jeremy and continuing the conversation?
They can find me through my organization's website, berriaultandassociates.com. You can also find me through LinkedIn. Do a search for Jeremy Berriault. And on Twitter, my handle is @jberriault.
Super. And we'll have that contact information in the show notes. Jeremy, again, wonderful to have these kind of conversations. You get me going, man.
That's the point.
In the SPaMCAST 599, we will feature our conversation with Steve Tendon. Steve and I talked agile, lean, flow, and how all those parts fit together. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?